Tonight, a historic and royal affirmation of Canada's strength and sovereignty. The praising and powerful words delivered by the King.
True north is indeed strong and free.
And a fresh taunt by the U.S. president with a price on partnership. Pride, pageantry, and capturing majestic memories.
I really want to remember this moment in my life.
And the touching moment for a Canadian cadet with the Queen.
I just knew that my dad would be very proud of me.
Raging flames in Western Canada.
If we lose houses, then we're totally displaced.
What's next for communities already on high alert? Plus, counting down to the country's oldest company shutting down for good.
They close everything down and we're left with nothing. This is evil.
And a potentially life-saving Canadian-led breakthrough.
You get the news that she's gone.
A possible lifeline for millions.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina, reporting tonight from Ottawa.
Good evening. The speech lasted just 27 minutes, but its historical impact will likely be felt for generations to come. King Charles reaffirming Canada's independence in an address that also laid out the government's agenda to redefine the relationship with the United States and the world. Representatives from every part of Canada gathered inside the Senate chamber. Supreme Court judges, past and present governors general, and prime ministers, with the notable exception of Jean Chrétien, Canada's oldest living prime minister, who was admitted to hospital yesterday and is recovering from minor heart surgery after receiving a stent. CTV's senior political correspondent Michael Couture starts us off with the speech and the political reaction.
A ceremony steeped in tradition for a speech that was meant to reinforce the country's future.
I've always had the greatest admiration for Canada's unique identity, which is recognized across the world for bravery and sacrifice in defense of national values and for the diversity and kindness of Canadians.
Against the backdrop of a U.S. president who wants to take over Canada, generations of prime ministers and premiers sat shoulder to shoulder as King Charles III asserted the country's place in the world and in particular, North America.
The Prime Minister and the President of the United States, for example, have begun defining a new economic and security relationship between Canada and the United States, rooted in mutual respect and founded on common interests to deliver transformational benefits for both sovereign nations.
The 25-minute speech reiterated Prime Minister Mark Carney's promises to make life more affordable for Canadians while investing in nation-building projects and diversifying trade. But the most pointed moment came when the King put his own stamp on the message.
As the anthem reminds us, the true north is indeed strong and free.
A phrase that didn't mention Donald Trump by name, but he was clearly the intended audience.
I think it is a message. I think, and a reminder not just to him, but to other Americans, that their best neighbor, their closest neighbor and their best friend is the same, only different.
Others were more blunt about how American lawmakers, and in particular Trump, should see and hear today's speech from the throne.
That Canadian sovereignty is not to be disrespected, that any relationship we have going forward on trade, the economy, defense, all has to be grounded in respect for the independence of Canada and our democracy.
The message was echoed by members of opposition parties. However, this speech will be the first test of Carney's government when MPs put it to a confidence vote in the House of Commons.
We did see a lot of the right slogans and political talking points, but no clear plans to get it done.
The NDP has said there are some things they could support in that throne speech, and those 7 votes would be enough for the Liberals to get it passed. Omar.
All right, Mike, thank you. The chance to witness history wasn't just reserved for those inside the Senate chamber. CTV's Abigail Beeman on the crowds gathered outside.
The expression is fit for a king. And thousands lined the streets to watch Canada deliver a carefully crafted event designed to be just that.
Why not try to get a good place to see the king? I think it's important.
It's a moment in time, and it makes us remember our history as we look forward.
I believe that their subtle support is being shown.
Excitement to see the Prime Minister, too, who described himself as the warm-up act. A horse-drawn carriage delivered the King and Queen to the Senate, where a 100-member honor guard from the 3rd Battalion of the Royal Canadian Regiment gave him a royal salute. His Majesty received a 21-gun salute, too, and spoke to as many people as he could, both inspecting the troops and in the crowd, before and after the throne speech.
It was very powerful, very moving, very Canadian.
Their Majesty's final event, laying a wreath to mark the 25th anniversary of the tomb of the unknown soldier. The Queen laid a bouquet, handed to her by Cadet Warrant Officer Olivia Vernelli, whose father was killed in action in Afghanistan when she was just 6 months old.
I was just so proud of myself, and I just knew that my dad would be very proud of me.
The King and Queen then said some goodbyes, and we're off.
The conclusion of a whirlwind trip, roughly just 24 hours. But as the King noted at the beginning of his throne speech, his 20th visit to Canada and his first as king. Abigail Beeman, CTV News, Ottawa.
Well, the U.S. president did not respond directly to today's throne speech, but did post this online after. On Truth Social, Trump wrote, "Canada very much wants to be part of our fabulous Golden Dome system. It will cost $61 billion US, equivalent to more than 84 billion Canadian, if they remain a separate but unequal nation," adding it will be $0 if they become our cherished 51st state. Trump ended with, "They are considering the offer." Mark Carney's office was quick to respond, writing, "The Prime Minister has been clear at every opportunity, including in his conversations with President Trump, that Canada is an independent, sovereign nation, and it will remain one." And let's bring in CTV's chief political correspondent, Vashi Kapelos, right now. And Vashi, that statement went on to say that there are ongoing conversations about strengthening NORAD and also the Golden Dome, but did not mention any numbers. What does that back and forth tell us about the future of the Canada-U.S. relationship, and how much of a difference will the King's visit actually make long term?
I'll answer that question, Omar, in the words of someone who used to lead the Canada-U.S. file for the previous government, who texted me tonight, "Good luck, guys." Kind of implying this is incredibly unpredictable, basically. And though we saw this show of solidarity around sovereignty today in a very unique and historical fashion, ultimately Donald Trump is going to Donald Trump, and that will inform the relationship between our two countries for at least the next 3 or more years.
It was interesting to see the King bring up bread and butter issues like tax cuts and the cost of living, especially given a man of his means. But at the end of the day, this is the government's legislative agenda. What stood out for you most?
So what stood out to me is similar to what has over the last month, and it is the level of ambition expressed through the throne speech today, but by the government. And by that I mean, normally we hear governments say, we will aim to make Canada an energy superpower. We will aim to improve your cost of living. This is like, we will make Canada an energy superpower. We will transform this economy into the strongest economy in the G7. That is an incredibly tall order. The expectations are incredibly high. And that means the focus from here on out is on results and whether or not they can meet the incredibly high expectations that have been set. That is an immense challenge.
A lot of work still ahead. Vashi Kapelos, thank you so much. And turning now to another story with a connection to the Crown. The Hudson's Bay Company was created by royal charter back in 1670 by King Charles II, and it could all be over by this weekend. CTV's Heather Wright on Canada's oldest company closing up shop and the employees left behind.
After 355 years, there are only 6 days left. Hudson's Bay will close its doors for good this Sunday, laying off more than 8,000 workers.
We put everything we had into this company, and they're giving nothing back. Nothing. And it's really a shame.
Today, Unifor, which represents roughly 7% of Bay employees, held rallies in Toronto and Windsor.
Who's going to pay?
The union is calling for changes to federal insolvency laws, highlighting that very few workers will receive severance as they are considered unsecured creditors and are way down on the list in terms of who gets paid. Court documents filed today also show employees on long-term disability will lose those benefits on June 15th.
There was no expectation we'd ever be in this position.
After more than 2 months of liquidation sales, you can see there's not much left inside this Bay store in Scarborough, Ontario. And it appears as though the company's trying to do whatever it can to save money. Not all of the escalators are running, the air conditioning's not on, and basically everything is for sale.
Yeah, it's weird seeing all like the mannequins being sold and stuff. It's like a ghost town in there.
Canada has not seen a wave of job losses this significant since Sears closed its doors in 2018. And while the company says both its defined benefit and defined contribution pensions are adequately funded, it's a tough time for employees to be out of work.
A lot of people are going to lose their houses. A lot of people are not going to be able to afford the rents, buy food. So it's very, very difficult.
Next week, the Bay will seek court approval to sell its intellectual property to Canadian Tire, including its name, logo, and the iconic stripes, in a deal worth $30 million. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
In other news, multiple wildfires are raging across the prairies, forcing many families to flee their homes. Dry conditions, rising temperatures, and strong winds are fueling the flames. And as CTV's Kathy Lee reports, there are warnings it could get worse.
A heavy plume on the horizon, an ominous signal danger is approaching.
We live in the bush, so you got to be ready for it.
Preparing for wildfires as many of them roar across the prairie provinces. In Alberta, a threatening inferno sweeps the landscape 8 kilometers north of Swan Hills.
We are expecting over the next day and a half, it's going to be windy, it's dry, and the temperatures are warming up.
The town, population 1,300, empty. Everyone forced to leave Monday night.
We're packing up 6:30 last night. Some food, clothes.
Families taking shelter in a reception center in nearby Whitecourt.
We've had close to 750 in total registered. We also have vouchers for hotel rooms, for meals, for groceries.
Support's also available for evacuees in multiple small northern communities in Saskatchewan, where hundreds were forced from their homes.
Everyone's kind of scared to lose houses and everything like that.
The largest wildfire in that province, a monstrous 216,000 hectares.
We live in a flammable landscape. And, this is our new reality. We're going to see more fire on the landscape and more smoke.
The state of Alaska and Quebec lending help with aircraft tankers and water bombers. The flames getting so close, firefighters had to reposition. And in Manitoba, 2 weeks after wildfire tore through Lac de Bonnie, killing 2 people, hundreds of residents from the northern town of Lynn Lake ordered out.
An incident commander for wildfire services, this fire is not acting like a typical one. The conditions are just so dry.
A wildfire expert says with the forecast for the summer looking to be hot and dry, to expect an active fire season across Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. Kathy Lee, CTV News, Calgary.
A judge has fined a catering company $10,000 after hundreds of children fell ill from an E. coli outbreak at Calgary daycares. Fueling Minds Incorporated pleaded guilty to 4 bylaw offenses in April after 448 people were infected with E. coli back in 2023. 39 children and 1 adult were treated in hospital. Alberta Health Services says the outbreak was likely connected to meatloaf, but how the bacteria got there remains a mystery. 20% of all deaths are tied to the life-threatening condition, sepsis. The chance of dying increases each hour and antibiotic treatment is delayed. CTV's Adrian Gobriel with the Canadian-led breakthrough aiming to save millions of lives around the world.
A potential lifeline for the global community.
This is a first step in getting the device to the bedside.
Often referred to as blood poisoning, a 2020 report estimates that 75,000 cases of sepsis occurs in Canada, leading to roughly 18,000 deaths each year. Critical care doctor Claudia Dos Santos and a team of researchers across Canada used AI to identify 6 genes historically found in patients who've experienced septic shock. A drop of blood into this device, which was created in part by the Canadian Space Agency, can help predict a patient's likelihood of developing sepsis.
To predict with 88% certainty how a patient will deteriorate in the next 24 hours.
How vital is it to have that lead time?
Every hour of delay in medical management increases mortality by about 8%.
In January, 29-year-old Selena Klinger-Evans had a C-section at this London, Ontario hospital, welcoming the arrival of a healthy baby boy named Isaiah. But the young mother took a devastating turn.
She had her C-section on Friday, January 17th, and by early Sunday morning, the 19th, she was dead.
Klinger-Evans' cause of death, septic shock. A sudden loss her parents are still coming to terms with.
I've heard about other families suffering the same thing across Canada at all ages, and it's heart-wrenching.
Dr. Dos Santos is hopeful this discovery will be a beacon of hope for millions.
This is a first step towards relieving a lot of the suffering.
The next step is for a clinical trial tested on patients inside ERs and ICUs right here in Toronto this fall to see how the device informs the decisions of doctors moving forward. Omar.
All right, Adrian, thank you. Coming up.
Causes a lot of fear and anxiety not being able to say definitively, I'm going to be at this school in September.
The battle between Donald Trump and Harvard intensifies, plus capturing stories of sacrifice through a creative lens. Another blow to Harvard University in the escalating fight between the U.S. president and American universities. Trump punishing the Ivy League school and international students, including Canadians. Last year, 751 students came from Canada, including the Prime Minister's daughter. Here's CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbin.
While Harvard prepares for graduation ceremonies, President Donald Trump delivered another blow to the Ivy League University, putting a halt on all new foreign student visa appointments and directing government agencies to terminate all remaining Harvard University contracts worth about $100 million.
We give them billions of dollars, which is ridiculous. We do grants, which we're probably not going to be doing much grants anymore to Harvard.
Trump wants to redirect the money to trade schools and stop enrolling foreign students, about a quarter of the student body here, putting hundreds of Canadians, including law student John Gobin's Harvard education, in limbo.
I've been dreaming this whole weekend of just being able to walk down the graduation stage next year. It causes a lot of fear and anxiety not being able to say definitively, I'm going to be at this school in September. I'm going to be living here.
The president has cast his cuts to Harvard as a fight for civil rights, accusing the university of woke liberal bias and anti-Semitism during those student protests over the Gaza war.
No more violent occupation! The problem with Harvard is that there are about 31%, almost 31% of foreigners coming to Harvard.
He's even demanding a list of names and countries of foreign students to help, quote, find radicalized lunatics and troublemakers.
It's a ban that is displacing 7,000 people who are just nose-in-the-book students who came here to receive the best education. Why? Because the administration wants to control who Harvard can hire and what Harvard can teach, and we said no.
The bitter court battle resumes Thursday. Harvard is suing, trying to block Trump's ban on foreign students and restore federal funding. Omar?
Joy Malbin in Washington tonight. Joy, thank you. Still ahead, the Passion Project putting Canadian veterans into focus. Photography can be a powerful and creative way to honor Canadian veterans. CTV's Sarah Plowman looks behind the lens at a project putting stories of sacrifice at the forefront.
At 87, Aris Leblanc knows time moves. But take a photo, and for that moment, time stands still.
So we were there to check.
Maurice Henry and photography students in Moncton are opening their lenses as veterans open up to them.
The whole thing, I'm doing it for the fishermen.
To capture and share stories before they fade. LeBlanc served in the Navy from 1955 to 1960.
What was the name of your ship?
Her Majesty's Canadian ship Swansea.
Right.
In 1959, as the Queen and President Eisenhower attended the opening of the St. Lawrence Seaway, his crew was there too. While off the coast of New Brunswick, a disastrous storm struck and 35 fishermen died.
We all wanted to go down and help them.
But he says his crew was never sent.
Maybe there was not enough oil aboard to sail and come back up. I don't know.
It's bothered him since, but today he's happy to share.
Because I've been waiting years for this. To tell my story so the widows and the children of those fishermen were lost. I feel bad for them, and that's why I want to tell my story.
With each photo shoot, veteran stories flood the room, their emotions and words captured for this project.
This is an actual story from the actual person who was actually there. And it takes it to a whole other level of understanding, truth, connection.
For students, the lessons seem endless.
You're not only taking a photograph, you're also capturing the soul of the person.
The project aims to tell the stories of 40 veterans. They'll go into an exhibit that will go on display in November, and eventually it'll go into a book. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Moncton.
Still ahead, a final look at an unforgettable royal day here in the capital. We leave you tonight with some of the sights and sounds of the historic throne speech here in Ottawa earlier today. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night and see you tomorrow.
It is with a deep sense of pride and pleasure that my wife and I join you here today as we witness Canadians coming together in a renewed sense of national pride, unity and hope. As the anthem reminds us, the true north is indeed strong and free.